Hey there, thanks for joining us here, Simply Worldbuilding. Today we're going to do a little bit of a quick build encounter system if you're new to DMing and you are intimidated or don't know how to start building your first handful of encounters for lower level players.
Yeah, it can be really intimidating to start doing your first handful of encounters, and this is just a little bit of a showcase just to show you how quick and easy it can be, especially at these lower levels where you're just getting started. Because realistically, this is just going to be a very simple system to get you going, and once you actually start to throw a few things onto the page and you do a handful of encounters and start moving on, things will get more complicated, but you will also get more used to it as you go.
You'll be more familiar with what kind of shenanigans can and will happen, especially as you get further up in the levels and the spells start getting weird. But for the first handful of levels, this is a quick and easy system to get you started.
And it really is quick and easy. For the most part, all you really need to do is take your handful of enemies. Now, these enemies are going to be pretty small. You're going to think your goblins, your kobolds, and stuff like that. Like the stuff you typically think of when you think of small D&D enemies. And you can even, if you want something a little bit outside of the ordinary, just Google small D&D enemies, low level. It'll come right up. But for the most part, I guess we'll just go with goblins for the sake of easiness. So yeah, you'll take your enemies, and then you will put them in a terrain that makes sense. Obviously, it just completely depends on your setting. If you're like, oh, they're in a forest, just pick forest. If they're in the mountains, just pick mountains.
Yeah.
That's not an important detail, just obviously it's part of the process.
You can, by the way, just straight up put into Google 5e enemies by CR combat rating, and most of those like charts, not only will they be like already sorted by what level your party should be to take them, but also a lot of them you can filter by I'm in a forest, I'm in urban, I'm in swamp, I'm on a mountain, and so you can pretty easily gauge what enemies generically will be in what environment and which ones will fit.
Yeah, and the CR isn't a perfect system, but again, in these early levels, I can't think of a ton of things that are going to be weird with CR. I can maybe think of a couple. There's the shades.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
Yeah, shades are notorious for being an accidental party wipe, but again, for the most part, like, don't worry about what kind of enemies you're throwing down if they're pretty low level, low health, low damage. You'll know it when you see it. And then when you start to understand, okay, where, like, your forest, your plains, etc., all you need to do for your battle map is just consider, for the most part, a single feature. You want to throw a bridge with a chasm, or it doesn't even have to be a chasm. In fact, it can just be a bridge that's going over a smaller trench that just carts can't get past. So it's not really high stakes or anything like that. You can have a area where, say, your enemies are a little bit elevated, like sort of a balcony of sorts or something like that.
There's the classic campfire ambush to keep them double guessing every time, and they say, do we complete the short rest? You got to throw in those every now and again.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically just one small feature that you can think of. Like I said, it can just be something simple, geographical. It can be something like a structure that maybe your goblins or small level creatures have made in order to make their area more defensible. Just think of basically one thing that you could put on the map and then put it there. And that's basically the whole thing. I know it doesn't sound crazy. This isn't a guide to your incredible high-level combat encounters. These are something for new DMs and new players. Just basically take your handful of enemies. In this case, you'll want to have you have your goblins. You'll want to add some variety to those. So maybe 4 goblins and 1 hobgoblin. Make a single bigger guy that's kind of the leader. Or you can add some variety and, like, maybe one of them's a spellcaster.
Yep.
Or maybe they have the goblin equivalent of like dogs or hounds or something like that. Just sprinkle in a tad of enemy variety.
That is important, because if you have 72 goblins, that gets really boring and also impossible to track on initiative.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have Goblin 1, 2, Goblin Archer 1, and weird pig dog thing that is with the Goblins 1 and 2, that's way easier to keep track of versus all of them being the same thing. And also, it gets a little bit boring saying, I attack Goblin.
Exactly.
75.
And then you take your setting and you put a feature in it. And that's it. That's all you really need to do. What we're going to do here is we're actually going to make a couple of little makeshift maps here for you to see what we're talking about. So let's check it out.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. We have a bit of a crudely drawn map, but it's just made with whatever equipment we happen to have. It's pick up a playmat. It's a good idea.
Yeah, reusable almost infinite times, and you can adjust it on the fly. It's considerably cheaper and more versatile than other equipment.
So just in terms of map making, it will make your life a lot easier. So just consider that. But that's beside the point. We have our map here. So we were basically considering plains or mild hills to be our location. In that location, there was a river with a bridge. That's your feature.
Boom.
Exactly, that quick. And now what we're going to show you is a few things that you have to consider when building your map. The first thing I think I would like to cover is when it comes down to distances. Understand how far your fastest and slowest party member can move in a given round. In the regular speed, dashing speed, what's their max distance, what's their minimum distance, and how far can they move? As you can see, when it comes down to our bridge that we have here, I've made it 35 feet. Your average character is going to be able to move 30 feet within a round. Making this bridge a little bit longer ensures that your players are not able to cross unless they use their action to do so.
You can't completely skip over the feature, the main feature of this map. You are mostly guaranteed to interact with it either by stopping partway on the bridge or using, for instance, an extra action to dash across it. But you cannot just completely write off the feature of this map.
Or if you do dash over it, you've done that, but you've used your action in order to do so. So there's resource management involved when it comes down to it. So in areas where there's like a bridge, a bottleneck, anywhere where your players are going to be funneled through, consider distances when it comes down to length.
Another thing to consider for most features, but especially one like we've got here, like you said, is a bottleneck. Alternative ways to interact with your feature, super beneficial. So for instance, if you can see here, we have put in stones that are partway through the river there. So because we have, and we'll get to this in a little bit, enemies blocking the end of this bottleneck, it becomes now a possibility to actually go around there. But like as an alternative option, you can use, for instance, extra resources to kind of skip over the bottleneck here by going on the stones, but that also is going to do things like make you make a dexterity check to jump or stay on the slippery rocks or whatever. But it is an alternative option so that you're not forced into this tactician level, like perfectly analyzed trap that these people have set. So you're not forced to only do one thing in this map. You have other options.
Exactly. Now, distances, again, you're going to have to jump that. So consider How far can my characters jump if you intend to put in obstacles of that sort of type? Is it 5 feet, something they could probably easily make? Or is it going to be a greater distance that, like you said, might add an additional check?
On this one, that one's 10 feet, which means that, if I'm remembering correctly, is going to be a little bit inconvenient for most characters, whereas most characters are going to be easily able to do 5 feet. So you have different options at varying levels of difficulty and interactability.
Other thing to consider when it comes down to distance is height and elevation in your maps as well. I put a little indicator here to show that the bridge is 5 feet from the water. Now, if you wanted to make this a slightly more treacherous thing, you could have it so that the water is a significantly farther distance, so they might take fall damage as they fall into it. That's something to consider as well. Or also, when it comes down to this end of the map here, you can see this is our representation of a bit of a cliff, a elevation of approximately 10 feet. This will prevent your players from merely being able to dash directly at certain enemies and give some of them a high ground advantage.
Yeah, so speaking of enemies with high ground advantage, we have, in classic fashion, used our elevation to put archers. So now the archers are positioned on this high ground where they can attack down, but it's much more difficult for them to attack back upwards at them. And we've put the other enemies here. This is a big bad guy, and then Goblin, for instance, X and Y. So there's one big tough guy and 2 henchmen blocking the edge of this, and then archers on the backdrop here up on high ground, so that they can rain down, and it's more difficult to get back up to actually tackle the threat of these archers because it's being blocked by these guys here.
Yeah, so your enemies are tacticians as well in a lot of cases. They're not merely just stupid guys running into the swords of your players. Unless maybe they're a beast or something like that, but anything with a moderate level of intelligence is going to have a level of tact to what they might do, and that's an example of that. Last thing, well, not necessarily last thing, but the next thing to cover is
Cover.
We've put in a handful of bushes here and there that might provide partial cover or complete cover, depending on exactly how you want to rule it. That's all up to you.
Yeah, you can add in things like full-on trees or partial walls, or
Stones.
say even like maybe like a tent at your campground is going to give you cover that'll stop things like arrows or spells. But something like a bush might only be half cover because an arrow is going to go through a bush, but it's going to be harder to aim at the person behind it because you're not totally sure where their vital points are and stuff. So this gives somebody a chance to, I'm not going to be able to clear the entire distance, or maybe I'm a ranger as well and I've taken my shot, but I don't want to get shot back. So now they have the choice to hide back behind this and interact with the map in a whole other way that's going to, say, diminish a little bit of the advantage that they get by having these high ground archers there.
And so, yeah, you as a player might think, oh, I'm a backliner, I've got to find cover, while, for example, your tank, barbarian, or just general martial class is trying to march up the center in order to actually tackle the enemies up front.
Yeah, and then on the same thing, while we're talking about roles as well, with these sort of side paths, there's going to be, a little tussle right in the middle here, but somebody like, for instance, like a rogue, they might want to go sneaky mode and handle the dexterity checks of jumping up here and getting a nasty little flank, stuff like that. If you know already ahead of time what your party is, which most of the time you will, you can toss in little things like that work to their advantage or disadvantage depending on how evil you are, but that they can interact with in a very specific way that is unique to them.
Yeah. And finally, one other thing to consider that makes your maps way more fun and interactable is destruction, like destructible cover or changing environments.
Easy there, Battlefield.
So here we have, I put just to represent the little posts that hold up your bridge in this corner here. It's also a possibility that you or the enemies as well, trying to prevent your advancement, might destroy the bridge. Just to add an example of destructible environments as well, but you can even do that with the bushes. Maybe someone does some sort of fire spell and it lights on fire and it becomes way less viable cover for whoever might have been hiding behind it. Say, even in a more urban environment, you could have crates, carts, etc., that are smashable. And so you have the ability to remove, or the enemy has the ability to remove your ability to hide or get up on certain elevations, all that sort of thing. And it makes the map feel a little bit less flat because you're not just swinging at enemies. The map is also there for you to punch. So you also have destructible things like that. Now, another example of changing environment that might not just be like a structure, like a bridge, for example. Maybe you're in a snowy mountain. Avalanche, totally on the table for something that might change the environment around you or even do damage. Perhaps if you have, if you are working with a river, there might be a flash flood that widens the river or sweeps away certain enemies or your players even. The idea of having the possibility of a changing environment also can make it fun. You don't have to add that to every map though, because adding an avalanche in every map is going to can also become, it makes you a little bit afraid to interact with anything, but if the possibility's there, it's another way to add another layer on top of your maps.
And another fun thing too is sort of like ulterior sort of end states of battle. Like for instance, maybe this isn't specifically just an ambush to kill the party. Maybe this is people who know that the party is going to go somewhere they don't want them to go, and so they're here to stop them however that looks. So maybe they say, our plan the entire time was to get here before them, and they happen to have good timing, but we're going to burn this bridge down. So on the first turn, one of these guys lights this on fire. First turn, not much fire, hasn't spread. Second turn, the fire starts to take over. Third turn, no bridge whatsoever. And so that adds like a little bit of a time constraint and a little bit of also another challenge on top of it that isn't just purely running across the bridge, I'm smacking a guy. You know, there's other things at play. There's things that are timed. If you're looking at like boss fights and stuff, you get things like layer actions as well, but that's for another video.
Yeah, that's as things get more complex.
Adding things like time constraints or changing environments and stuff like that adds a whole lot of more fun and complexity to your maps as well.
Exactly, and by no means don't feel obligated to add every one of these things into your map. An example we had from a recent game was there was no cover. It was an open field.
Yeah, and sometimes your feature is the lack of a feature, and that's a whole other thing.
So the idea that I didn't put any cover on the map was actually a huge thing because they were fighting hill giants who were throwing rocks at them from like 300 feet or more. They didn't have anything that was effective within that range. The giants did, and so all of a sudden it was a mad dash to close the distance. So adding or removing or having some mix and matching all of these things can make your maps more interesting, but don't feel obligated to add all of them. Sometimes it might be a bit too busy, and sometimes it just doesn't work. So mix and match as you will. But I think that's the basic gist on these. So basic things to keep in mind. When you're trying to make an encounter for your party, these are your first handful. Don't get too complicated with it. Just take your handful of enemies, add a tiny bit of variety, take your environment, add a feature to it, and then things to consider when doing that. Distances, height, cover, and destructibility. Those are the basic things. If you just kind of have that written on a piece of paper beside you as you're trying to make your map, and you can look over, think,
I would almost
how do I add this?
I would almost maybe change destructibility to interactability.
Yeah, that's probably a better
having
term.
them be destroyable, good type of interaction, but sometimes it's as simple as maybe that's a drawbridge and they pull the bridge up or something too. But being able to change and interact with it,
that is a better
or
term
destroy
for
it.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so just have this little list of things off to the side for you, and like I said, you don't have to use all of them, but you have them there, and it might remind you, oh, there's no cover, and I want there to be cover. I should include that. Include all these things, and your maps are going to be a breeze. So we hope this helped, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye for now.